Welcome to the HealthTech Edge. I'm Mike Moore. Today we're talking about how AI can make dining out safer for people with food allergies and dietary needs. My guest is Dylan McDonnell, founder of Foodini. Dylan built Foodini after living with celiac disease and seeing how broken ingredient transparency is in restaurants. Foodini uses AI plus dietitian review to help restaurants label menus accurately and to help diners instantly see what's safe for them. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Mike. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Obviously, you share your personal story as part of your founder's story for the company. What made it kind of flip the switch for you when you said kind of enough's enough, I need to act, I need to be part of solving this issue that many people in your situation and with other dietary, whether it's allergies or dietary needs, kind of deal with? What started the action?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned, so I was diagnosed as a celiac when I was 10 years old. And so I've had, 20 plus years of navigating this across all of life. But the constant toughest part has always been out of home, be that restaurants, be that ordering online, be that, at stadiums, at events. It's always when it's outside of your kitchen. And I was a lawyer prior to jumping into this world, so I didn't have, a background in food or health or nutrition at all. But I think it was just a culmination of a lot of little things, like just staff giving me wrong information, not having any information, serving me the wrong food and getting sick and then being out of work for a week, like just a lot of constant things. And eventually I think I just hit a point and I was like, how is it still possible in this day and age that there's so little information or so little transparency for consumers? And then I dug into the numbers in terms of how many people are impacted by this. And once I realized you had, nearly half the US population with a dietary need, with 33 million Americans having a diagnosed food allergy, I was just like, this is way too big of a market for there not to be a solution. And decided to do something about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's break it down for the audience. What do you think is really kind of broken in the way that the people with allergies or dietary needs, when they go to eat out, where are the breakdowns happening in the process?
Yeah, I think to answer this question, that the first thing that needs to be said is I have a lot of empathy for restaurants and food service operators. It's not like there's this magic data layer that exists that I think if most restaurateurs could just wave a wand and give consumers this information accurately, they would. But like I said, this data hasn't really existed in an easy to format manner. And so it's been a really tough thing for restaurateurs to navigate. And as a result, a lot have just said, oh, we're just not going to do anything because we're not confident that we can do it correctly. And so what we do have is you do have the data you require to do this correctly in different systems. So you have the menu, you have recipes, you have products. All of them live in different kind of areas. And so what we've kind of figured out how to do is pull that information from the different places it exists, enrich it with the correct, we have an AI solution and we have a team of dietitians who kind of between them manage to analyze and enrich all of that data. And then the output is a source of truth with all of your menus, all of your recipes, all of your products correctly tagged with allergy and dietary information, which allows us to power a personalized menu solution for consumers.
So let's talk about that personalized menu solution for the consumers. What does it look like from a diner's experience when they walk into the restaurant or perhaps when they're at home and visit the website to try to figure out, is this a place that I can go and eat safely?
Yeah, so twofold. So in restaurants, it's normally via QR code. So in the bottom corner of the menu, food allergies, dietary needs, scan here. On the website, it'll be food allergy dietary menu, click here. So when a consumer either scans or clicks, it brings up a web page, so they don't need to download an app or anything, prompting them to create their dietary profile. We have 150 different diets and allergens they can choose from, so not just the major 9. So consumer goes gluten-free, vegan, apples, and keto, save, and instantly we show them, here's what you can eat, here's what you can eat with a modifier and what that modifier is, and here's what you can't eat and why, because this ingredient is baked into that item. So it's completely personalized for the consumer based on their dietary profile.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that level of detail, I think, for people who don't have any kind of allergies or dietary preferences or needs, again, you're talking about kind of when you started realizing there was a problem to be solved here, and kind of the scale at which, for people who don't, like myself, I'm fortunate, and we have 3 children who don't have any things. Although we've got one who's kind of lactose intolerant at
Okay.
times,
Yeah.
but it's manageable because we anticipate that one issue. But I think, again, you're saying, and I too, through this conversation, you realize how many people are affected by it, and the empathy you feel for them. And I think to your point is a fair one as well for the restaurants who are ultimately your customer at Foodini. Right? It's like they want to do better. They realize that there's an opportunity here to better serve the public who comes through their door.
And you hit on a point there, which is, I think, critical here, which is, there's doing the right thing for the consumer, right? But there's also this is really good for your business. So if we go back to the numbers for a second, you have about half the population who has a dietary need. For the most part, if people who have a food allergy or dietary need don't understand or can't see that there's something on their menu suitable for them, they won't go. If they don't go, not only do you lose them, you lose their family, their friends, their coworkers. We call that the veto vote. So it's a lost revenue right now, but it's also a massive revenue opportunity for the groups who do a good job in terms of dealing with this problem. And then over the top of that, these are the most loyal consumers you're ever going to find. Like once they find a place that, they have a good experience at, they keep going back again and again and again because they've been burnt so many times at other places. So you've got the revenue opportunity, you've got the operational efficiency. Currently staff are, some 16-year-old who started last week is the barrier, the guardian to this consumer who might have a life and death food allergy. They haven't been trained on food allergies. They couldn't be an expert on every allergen and every ingredient and every menu item. And so not only do we see about a 60% reduction in the number of questions being asked to staff by having a personalized solutions that consumers can access, but also a dramatic reduction in the number of mistakes. And then that reduces lawsuits and damage, everything that kind of goes with that. And then there's the data. We can also tell restaurants last month at X location, you had 1,000 dietary profiles created, 40% were gluten-free, 25% were vegan, 10% were keto, but you've no keto-friendly options on your menu. If you optimize your menu to do this, it could drive your bottom line by Y. So there's a lot around understanding your guests, understanding your menu, that kind of data drives as well. So point being, a lot of business benefits to doing this above and beyond it just being the right thing to do anyway.
Yeah, and I think the data piece is that's an interesting piece too, because you're giving, based on the scans and the profiles of the diners who are exploring the menu, I then want to relate that to the data from the point of sale system that's telling me what the sell-through products are, and kind of doing a match to see, we're seeing this, can we, then there's certainly, from a marketing and demand generation standpoint, you could be running campaigns about how you are friendly to whatever, kind of menu people might be looking for. So
100%.
yeah, there's a lot of interesting scenarios. So let's break it down from a restaurant's point of view. They learn about Foodini, or we're going to talk a little bit about, or actually let's start with that. In California, there's a new law that's been passed that mandates sharing this kind of information. Let's start with that and kind of educate the audience a little bit about what's happening in California.
Sure. So up until October in the United States, there has been zero regulation around food allergies in restaurants. So consumer packaged goods have to have nutritional labels with allergens. They bought in a nutrition, had to be displayed on for venues, 20 plus locations about a decade ago, but never anything got to do with allergens in restaurants. And on the 13th of October, Gavin Newsom in California signed SB 68, which mandates restaurant groups with 20 plus locations, where at least one of those locations is in California, so 20 nationally, to label their physical and digital menus for the major 9 food allergens effective 1 July 26, so in 6 months' time. And so that's huge because it captures pretty much nearly every enterprise and mid-market brand in the country. Most of them have at least a location in California, so they now have to do this for there. It, I think, for the first time, kind of shows the seriousness and the importance of like why this needs to exist. Like, this has been standard in Europe for a decade. You can't even open a hot dog stand without putting this information on the menu. So, the US has just been behind in this regard, but there's finally momentum here. The senator in California has already committed to go back and do this for all allergens, for all restaurants, not just 20 plus. There's a bill in New York that already covers all restaurants. That's kind of in the earlier stages. Other states are getting ready to go. At federal level, RFK, whatever your politics, but the MAHA movement is doing a lot about ingredient transparency. And, he has 3 kids with food allergies and has made food allergens now a priority health issue for the White House. There's a lot of momentum in this space, and I feel like the future is suddenly brighter, or looks like it could be a lot better for the tens of millions of people who are impacted by food allergies over the next, 6, 12, 24, 36 months.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about that process for the restaurant. They either have to comply with the law by the deadline, or they just realize this is a great idea by learning about Foodini. They contact you. What happens from there, and kind of what's the steps in the process, and what's the time frame for going live?
Yeah, and like, it's interesting. The main reason we exist, as I said, is because this has been hard to do for restaurants. It's the main reason they haven't done it. So we essentially make it super simple for them to get this allergen information in the first place. So we'll pull from their POS system, we'll pull from their inventory or recipe system, we'll pull the products from our product database. We're already plugged in with most of the major distributors, and our technology will just enrich it all and create a single source of truth that our dietitian team QA. So the restaurants have very little to do initially other than just give us their data. We do all the heavy lifting. We then typically set up an onboarding call to verify. There's typically a few gaps, product missing, recipe that doesn't look correct, like something like that. So we'll clarify, make sure everything's correct. Then we give them the QR code for venue, the link for their website, and we just make sure we keep it up to date when their menu changes over time. So, the process is typically, it depends on how responsive the restaurant is to our questions or how good their data is. Sometimes we work at SMBs where, they have nothing documented, and sure, it's a longer process, but I'd say on average it takes about 2 weeks to get someone fully set up, and yeah, pretty seamless on there and not too much heavy lifting.
So let's talk a little bit about the tech underneath the hood. Where are you utilizing artificial intelligence, and kind of what does that look like from a processing the menus and the information point of view?
Yeah, so we spent a bit of time training LLMs on menu, recipe, product data, and so that does now a very good job of creating kind of a very, very strong first draft. As I said, I think the most important thing is it tells us when it's certain and it tells us when it's not certain. So we essentially, you can't have, hallucinations in this space when it comes to, dealing with food allergies and stuff like that. It either knows or it doesn't know with 100% certainty either way. So essentially our system will flag to our team, our dietitian team, anything that it's not certain on, or that looks like a gap or a missing ingredient or something like that. And it just massively streamlined the process. This has been something that's been extremely manual and then, as a result, error prone at times. And so our system has been built to kind of avoid those instances and keep this just rock solid.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that as the database grows, the AI model gets smarter and richer in terms of what it knows and what typical recipes contain. And then if you're sourcing ingredients from some of the major food distributors in the United States, or right, those kind of things, I'm sure that as the model grows, as you get more restaurants on board, that it just gets smarter and smarter as it goes.
That's exactly it. The more data in and the more training data for the models, and the more times our dietitian team will tell it when it didn't know something, well, here's what it was. It learns, it knows for the next time. So you're 100% right. It continues to get smarter and smarter over time.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we said it's a couple of weeks typically if things going well and kind of smoothly. I like also the fact that, we talk a lot in this podcast about AI and introducing AI into various workflows and operations, but it's a tool for humans. You still have professional dietitians who have experience in the industry and working with restaurants and food and knowing these things. It's not just, the AI throws up something, we sign off on it and kind of copy paste it, publish it, and good luck, right? It's a tool for humans.
You have to, Mike. It's funny. I remember there was a few apps that came out over the last while where it'd be like, take a picture of your food and we'll tell you exactly what's in it. And it's like what data set is that trained on? Like, how could it possibly know with any kind of idea of accuracy unless it's pulling the exact menu data from that restaurant item or from that recipe or whatever it might be? So the bottom line, AI is amazing, but bad data in, bad data out. Like, the data in is so critical, and we'll see menu items that are called like rocket ship. Like our AI has no idea what that is. It might think it's a spaceship. Like it could be a banana split, or it could be a soup, or it could be a shrimp dish. Who knows? It's a restaurant who just had a creative name, right? So you have to have the manual intervention, the ability to have a conversation with the executive chef at the restaurant group to get clarity as well. You need the combination of both. There's no way around it when it comes to health.
Yeah, and that's where I think the accuracy really matters, because there are plenty of food logging apps that people use for, just tracking their macros or whatever they're trying to do from a calorie intake, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
the accuracy of those things is relative it's, how many grams of protein or carbs or whatever I'm consuming a day, because I'm trying to manage that and trying to lose weight or trying to gain muscle or whatever health outcomes, which is far different than I'm trying to avoid allergens that could produce an anaphylactic reaction, right? That, or other kind of things that people deal with, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, and this is an important point you touch on, and it's something I always kind of make the point when we're dealing with like end users as well. Like from a consumer standpoint, I think it's critical that they understand that unfortunately, there is never a guarantee. There is always some level of risk when you dine out of home, because a restaurant can give us all of the best data in the world. But if a chef gets out of the wrong side of bed and forgets that that salad doesn't contain nuts and puts a bag of nuts into it, there's nothing, that human error, unfortunately, does happen from time to time. And so you still need to protect yourself and understand if you're like highly allergic to X, that, you need to make informed decisions based on your own risk tolerance and the kind of impacts on your health that has. Having said that, when you do have a restaurant that you can see has taken the time and made the effort to document this and put it in front of you in a way that clearly displays that they took the time to analyze this, they're a hell of a lot less likely to make that mistake than the restaurant down the road that has nothing documented. And so it comes back to like providing, like we don't make recommendations. We don't say you should eat gluten-free or you should eat vegan or you should eat here or you should eat there. We just transparently reflect the ingredients and allergens in those menu items to help consumers to make an informed decision based on their own risk appetite. And that transparency, I think, is what's been missing, and that's what we try and provide.
Right. And I think there's obviously someone who might choose a keto diet or a vegetarian diet or something like that, or vegan as a preference, versus allergies and those, similar kind of situations. So restaurant goes live. What is kind of the immediate impact for staff and diners? You've hit on a couple points, but let's just kind of, drive that home a little bit more.
Yeah, well, immediately the consumer at their fingertips has this accurate, personalized information. They have their own personal menu. I think in particular when you look at like teenagers and Gen Z, like the kind of generation who don't really like talking to people, or, who are more like, I mean that with tongue in cheek, but, they're more on their phone. They're used to getting information through apps and, different technical solutions. So now, but whether before they get to the restaurant or when they're actually in there, they have all that personalized and accurate information at their fingertips to completely streamline that process. And it's also just like different people are different. I used to hate having to have the conversation at the table. I'm with friends, I'm at a work dinner, like now I have a 5-minute back and forth with someone who's trying to, and you're like, it's a bit awkward, it's a bit embarrassing for some people. I just want to be like everyone else and just order my food and enjoy my experience and get on with it. So we kind of enable people to again, get that information on their phone, order like everyone else, and not have to ask someone if there's nuts in this or not because they already know. And so I think from day one, consumers are happier. Staff and a lot of our venues also utilize it as their source of truth. So they will, when answering a phone call or an email, or even we have some who have it on like a tablet because they take orders that way. They'll literally use our tech to like quickly, they'll ask any allergies at the table. Someone will say X, Y, and Z, and they'll quickly go, blah, and then talk them through what they can eat as well. So there's a lot of different use cases. It all comes back to once you have the accurate data documented, it's just a matter of structuring it in the right way to enable that kind of level of personalization for the consumer. But, we have virtually no churn, Mike, in terms of customers that we work with. So, I think it's pretty well received pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I think that loyalty impact and the revenue impact, them seeing and feeling that in the metrics you're providing them must be motivational as well, right?
Yeah, and so we give that kind of data analytics to our restaurants every month as well, so they understand how many people are ordering, what their dietary profiles are, what menu items they're looking at, like, what the revenue impact is. So we give all that analytics, and yeah, it's significant. I would put, I obviously am biased, and I put it in the bucket of no-brainer, but yeah, I think most of the groups that it's education and awareness for the most part, because we are a new tech, it's not like we're replacing a reservation or an online ordering system. We're kind of a new item that hasn't really been, around before. And so for the most part, it's just helping educate and giving case studies and examples of other customers we work with to help restaurant groups and food service as well. Because bear in mind, we can also work with stadiums, universities, schools, hospitals, aged care, airlines, cruise ships. Like, we can work across the spectrum. But it's just educating them on what those benefits are and giving them those examples to help them understand.
Yeah, that's great. So where are your customers today, and where do you plan to go in the next year?
So we're live in the US, Canada, and Australia. We have, a range, as I said, small independents to mid-market to like big food service companies and stadiums as well. We're probably have the highest density in California, just given that's kind of where we are. That's also where the regulation is coming. So you can imagine most of our focus is there, but we get inbound all the time from restaurants all over the country. Like, you don't need to be in California to put this in your location, and you can have one location or 100 locations, or 1,000 locations. It all operates in the same way. So over the next year, like next 6 months in particular, until 1 July, will be very heavy focus on California for our team. I think that's where most of our stuff is, but we plan on being all over the US, working with groups of every shape and size, and just bringing this technology to, get it as many consumers access to it as possible, because ultimately it's their lives that we're changing by making them feel safe and included.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, the expansion to the point where ultimately, as you say, like in Europe, where it's just it's a requirement for all, right? And that's where I think probably a lot of the chains that are in those franchises that are in California where they have to comply, there's no reason not to now leverage that work that they're doing with you and the team and put it so that information is available in all of their brick and mortar locations as well as on their website, so people can leverage that across the country. Like, you've done the work and the menu is the same for a McDonald's or, whatever, or, In and Out and those kind of things. Like, now I can learn from that information and make decisions, healthy decisions that are going to be safe for me and my family.
100%. And the good news is that most of the groups we've spoken to who are caught in California are planning on putting this same experience and all the rest of their locations around the country, because the big chains, they're chains because of the consistency of experience. They don't want someone to walk into Santa Monica and have one experience and Manhattan and have a different one. So we expect that the trickle down effect of this nationally will be significant, and then consumers start seeing this as standard and it becomes part of the expectation. And then the restaurants down the street see that the big chains up the road have done it, and then they're like, well, consumers are now looking for this and we don't have it, we better move. So it's all momentum. But I think when it comes to the two main things I think consumers now are looking for is personalization. They get it everywhere from their Netflix to their DoorDash, and they want that and expect that personalization, but also transparency. Like, I think people more and more now are very focused on what they're putting in their body. You have the Food is Health movement, you have the microbiome tests, the super healths, the superpowers, the function healths of the world. People are only going to get more and more obsessed with what's going into their body and will demand this transparency. Like, it's already happening, but it's only going to increase.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think this has been yet another story about the use of artificial intelligence and the way that it's able to help and providing that deeper level of information and insights that help people make those healthy decisions. And also from a business point of view, as we've established here, it's just good business, right? The more information and transparency, we talk a lot about AI and transparency and decision making. Here's AI, providing transparency in diet and food, right? To make sure that people understand what they are consuming and can whether it's a preference or an allergy or some other health condition that they're managing, that they can live the healthiest life possible. And I think what you and the team are working on is admirable. So I appreciate you walking us through this and kind of giving some real world examples of AI and how it improves safety, trust, and just inclusivity in everyday life.
Appreciate those kind words. Very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you as well today. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Foodini, you can check out the show notes. We'll include a link to their website. If this episode was useful, we encourage you to follow the HealthTech Edge, share it with someone working on patient safety, consumer experience, or digital health products. With that, we'll go ahead and sign off. I'm Mike Moore. Thanks for listening.